Hello, welcome, good evening. If you're in Europe and if you're in America, what time would it be in America? It's 7:45 here. That means that America's about what, 8 hours behind, depending on where you are. So I suppose it's around midday. Or if you're on the if you're on the West Coast, then it would be the morning, probably. Okay, well, anyway, good to have you with me. I did a previous live stream in the morning of the UK, and obviously that meant that our friends in America were having to tune in at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I decided to do an evening live stream to obviously accommodate you guys. Let me just have a quick look at your chats that you've already started sending in. Okay. How did the book of Genesis know everything had a beginning? Yeah, the only possible way of knowing is through revelation. Thanks, Mike Wagner, for that. Thank you for that. It's a guess by observing the lifestyle. Okay, well, let me just tell you why I gave that title to this live stream. I'm hopefully going to be talking about other things. I've got quite a few various videos to talk about, various calls, etc. And also, I went to another Christian service recently. I want to talk about that. Oh, by the way, am I coming through loud and clear? If somebody could leave a message, if somebody could leave a chat and say whether you can hear me okay, because I'm just using an Acer laptop, which the input on it, I'm just using the onboard mic. I'm not even using my headphones. Loud and clear, but video is frozen for me. Okay, well, I don't know why that is, Angel Fish. Maybe it's because, yeah, is the video coming through, guys? Can you see Angel Fish? It's probably because it's buffering or something like that. I don't know, but it's coming through okay. Everything seems to be okay on my end technically. So I'm hoping that all of you can actually hear me and see me. I suppose if you can only see me, hear me, then that's better than nothing. It's probably better that you can hear me and have a frozen screen than have no sound and just have me, my mouth moving, but you can't hear what I'm saying. Okay, good. Thanks, Stephen Jackson. So I watched the debate between Desouza and Alex O'Connor. I watched it all the way through. At first, I watched one or two of his clips, and then I realized, actually, it's probably interesting to watch all the way through. So I watched it, or rather listened to it all the way through this afternoon. And I made a number of notes, but the original clip that I looked at was on this question, or at least the claim by Desouza. How is it known in Genesis that the universe had a beginning? And Desouza asked Alex O'Connor this question, and he said to Alex, how did the writer of Genesis know that the universe had a beginning? And Alex immediately answered, I don't know. Now, my answer to that wouldn't be the same. My answer would be, well, we don't know whether the person who actually wrote down those words knew that the universe had a beginning or not. We don't know that because, in fact, as Alex said, it might have been a lucky guess. I mean, there aren't many options. If you say, if we could go back a few thousand years and you found yourself, I don't know, let's say you found yourself on a desert island and your parents had sort of brought you there and brought you up in a very primitive way, of course, but you could speak, you could reason, etc. But you had no knowledge at all of any religions or anything like that. If you were an exceptionally observant and intelligent person, you might ask the question. I mean, imagine your parents died and you had no other way of getting any information. You were there all on your own, and you were asking this question. You might ask the question, where did all this come from? And you might be faced with different possibilities. Either it's always been here, yeah, or it wasn't always here. So if it wasn't always here, then maybe it started off somehow. And if it started off somehow, then it probably would have had a beginning. So it's not kind of, it's like, as Alex said, that before we had science, we had philosophy. And from a philosophical standpoint, one could reach a conclusion, no matter how many thousand years you go back and how little information you had, that everything around us might have had a beginning. It's not, it's like he said, it's virtually like a 50-50 kind of thing. Either it's always been here, or it had a beginning, or maybe some other possibility. I suppose that's three. So say a 1 in 3 chance, or if you're taking a narrative approach about anything, then it's most likely going to have a beginning. And if we observe things around us, we see things that have got beginnings. And it's not really remarkable to me that it was thought that there was a creator God, and that prior to everything existing, there was this creator God, and that the beginning of everything came about as a result of something that the creator God did. It's not remarkable to me at all. And I'd like to think that if I lived thousands of years ago, and if I had sufficient intelligence, I might actually reach that conclusion myself. And yet, this is one of Desouza's star points. How is it known? It reminds me of all the Muslims that leave messages on my channel. When I do a video about Islam, I get so many new Muslims coming onto my channel. They think I'm the crazy one. They think, I've got no morals. I don't understand the science in the Quran. I've got no rational. My reason is faulty. My logic is faulty. And they're claiming that we should believe in the Quran because it got so much right about science. It's well, they're entitled to their view and they're entitled to their opinion, but I just have to say that they have not really properly addressed critique of the Quran, and I think that people who believe that there's sufficient scientific evidence that could not have been known in the Bible, that it proves that there must be a creator God behind it. It must have some sort of divine origin because these things could not have been known. No, I reject that completely. Just as I explained how if I grew up on a desert island with no parents or anything, I might have reached that conclusion myself. It's just not remarkable at all. And I think that Alex did a good job of pointing out that, no, this is no big deal. It's no big deal at all. Sorry, let me just quickly review some of your comments. Now, I'm liable to ramble because, when I do my reaction videos, for example, with Matt, that kind of thing, I usually watch the call a couple of times. I make notes. And actually, sometimes, to be honest with you, I end up recording it 3 times because I make such a monumental mess of my commentary that I end up having to do it again. So, I'm just now ad-libbing all the way through. I'm probably going to repeat myself. I'm probably going to ramble. So obviously, if you can make some allowances there. And I'd just like to say to you that some of you have said, oh, Stuart, you'd be really good on the line. No, not necessarily. Because what those guys do on the line, where they're responding to arguments in real time, I think that they mostly do a phenomenal job. And I'm not really 100% confident that I could do as good a job or even do a confident job. What I do really is remarkably easy compared with what the call-in show hosts are doing. And I know that I'm critical of them sometimes, but on the whole, I think that they do an amazing job. And I don't necessarily think that I would do that good a job on there. And I don't really care too much because I've got my own channel. And I kind of like it because I like to be in control of what is going on. So let me just have a look at some of your comments. Okay, everything's good by the looks of it, technically anyway. It's a guess by observing the life cycle of what's around us. Yes. Stephen Jackson says possibly it's always been there, or the conditions that would cause it to have always been there. Okay, thank you, Andres Castanos, for your greeting. So I thought Alex dealt with that well. Let's not dwell on that too much because it was quite a long talk. But it really just demonstrates to me the poverty of Desouza's case. He's supposed to be like in the league of Sam Harris, and I mean, there's like in regards to new atheists and those who are countering new atheists or the sort of apologists, he's supposed to be in the same league as William Lane Craig, and obviously countering people like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, etc., etc. And I'm not impressed at all when somebody uses as evidence that how could Actually, I've not really heard this. I've not really heard this used as evidence before. That how could the writer of Genesis known that the universe had a beginning? Now, let's face it. How do you define beginning? Do we really know that the universe had a beginning? Um, I understand that it was more of an expansion of something that was pre-existing, and I don't really think that we know enough about how that so-called Big Bang, which wasn't a Big Bang after all, it was an expansion, how it all started or whether it started and in what sense it started. I don't think that we know enough to build an argument around that, which leads to the conclusion that the universe must have had a cause, let alone that that cause is a thinking agent that's always been there. To me, that is just such a mind-bogglingly boneheadedly illogical and irrational conclusion to draw from that so-called evidence. Okay, let me just have a quick look at your comments. Stephen Jackson says critiquing and responding in real time are two different skills. Yes, I agree with you. Desouza couldn't even defeat me, and I'm not even brilliant. Yeah, well, okay, let me just look at my notes and see what else was said, because I made, oh yes, okay, all right. So I think actually that D'Souza did more talking than Alex. I've been a bit critical of Alex recently because he's had William Lane Craig on, and he's had other Christians. He's rubbing shoulders with people like Justin Brierley, the Christian smug smile brigade, as I call them. I mean, they've all got identical smiles, and William Lane Craig as well. I've never seen anything like it. They're all a particular breed of sort of born again, smug, smiling Christians. But God bless them. I'm glad they're around because they give me so much amusement. And, people like me and Matt maybe give them amusement as well. I don't know. The only difference is I don't believe in a God and they do. And that makes me entirely different. It's not true that, oh, you atheists are all in the same boat as theists because you've got God on the mind all the time. No, that's not the case at all. Okay, let me just see what I've written down here. Oh yes, this idea that, okay, all right. So let's get into sort of New Testament claims now, and the claim of D'Souza that the way that the Gospels are written is such that it's obvious that the evangelists, in other words, the four Gospel writers, had truth, telling the truth as their priority. That was the main thing for the evangelists, that there are clues in those texts which should not really be there. There are certain things that no evangelist in their right mind would put in there because they want to convince potential converts that what they're saying is true, namely that there is a character called Jesus who is the Son of God, and he really did come back from the dead, and he is the path to salvation. But that is the truth, or that's the truth that they're trying to tell, and they don't want to corrupt that truth by putting untrue details into the narrative. Their adherence and their love of the truth is so great, they want it all to be authentic and perfect. So why then, this is what D'Souza is asking, why are they putting things into the narrative which harm their case? Now, Alex very quickly said, well, give me an example. Good question. What's an example? Well, actually, the only example I could think of which has been claimed that it shouldn't be there. In other words, if the resurrection didn't happen, this detail wouldn't be there. No, that's not true. Okay, so the detail is that there were, in at least one of the gospel accounts, 3 women who came across the empty tomb, and that in Jewish courts of law, women's testimony only counted if there were several of them. So there would have to be a lot of women as witnesses in order for their testimony to be taken seriously. And with a man, if he was in the court, I don't know how accurate this is because I haven't gone and looked at the historicity of Jewish law. So I'm really just going on what D'Souza and what Alex said. But Alex pointed out, or at least D'Souza pointed out, that only multiple female witnesses could be taken seriously. And Alex quite rightly pointed out, yeah, we've got 3 women. We've got 3 women finding the tomb. So we've got the multiple witnesses there. And furthermore, actually, as I researched some time ago, and I think I even made a video about this, that typically, but not always, could depend on certain things, that women did the embalming process. They went along with their oils, with their I don't know, spices or whatever they used, scents, perfumes, and they did things to the body. They anointed the body. They rubbed oils into it to try and, I don't know, preserve it and clean it up and everything. So women typically did this, not men, and it makes complete sense then that um, women probably did go to the tomb. Let's presume that Jesus really was crucified. Let's presume that he really died, and let's presume that in the unlikely event that a special tomb was set by for him. That's the detail that doesn't really quite ring true, because I think that the Romans took the bodies and they just simply disposed of them outside of the city walls. And I believe there was a pit where all the bodies were thrown. I can't say that that's what happened, because obviously we don't know. And the report we've got from the Gospels is that a tomb was prepared for Jesus. It's possible because he had followers. But on the other hand, if his followers saw Jesus crucified, they might be scared, and they were scared, or at least according to the accounts in the story, they were scared. And that taking his body to a tomb, how do they know they wouldn't be victimized by the Romans, or even worse, crucified or put to death or flogged severely for um, being a follower of Jesus? I find it slightly unbelievable that he had this tomb, that Jesus had a tomb, but okay, let's go with it. Let's say that Jesus had a tomb. There's nothing remarkable in writing into a narrative that women attended the tomb, especially in view of the fact that it's irrelevant whether women were believable then or not. And the reason for that is that if you read the accounts, nobody was believed on pure testimony alone. The whole story about doubting Thomas is that he went along and the apostles said, Jesus is risen. He didn't believe his own friends, who were all men. When you're making claims like this, you won't be believed. You won't be believed if you're claiming that somebody rose from the dead. And even Thomas, who obviously was a close disciple of Jesus, didn't believe women, and he didn't believe men. He didn't believe anybody. And the only reason the apostles believed is that, according to the story, Jesus had appeared to them. That's why they believed. So it's irrelevant, really, to say that, oh, well, women wouldn't have been good witnesses, because nobody would have been a good witness for that kind of claim, because nobody was believed. And I believe that the women only found an empty tomb anyway. And I think in one of the accounts, they found a young man outside of the tomb who, it doesn't really say whether he was Jesus or not, just sent them to go and tell the apostles a message. So I find this whole thing about women were put in and this harms the case a complete non-starter, a red herring, and just an argument which I've noticed that not even William Lane Craig, I think, is using this now, because it's not really a credible, it's just not credible. And even if it's the case that, you know, the Gospels are peppered with these details which could harm the case, even if we could find several of these and many of them, it still would not be sufficient for me to conclude that, you know, they were telling the truth. It might be sufficient for me to confirm that from 2-3 decades away, they were not eyewitnesses, and that they're trying to stick to the sort of oral tradition that's come down to them, or this document that 3 of the Gospels, I think, thought to have drawn on them, the document they call Q, I think, that they would have wanted to stick to those accounts, and that whoever wrote that account, or whoever passed the oral tradition, they tried to stick to the truth as they'd heard it. But what could not be confirmed is that Jesus actually rose from the dead. They might well just be adhering to truthful details, but that still doesn't confirm that a resurrection actually happened. It just means that they want to try and remain faithful to the story that they've heard. That's all it means. And it's like Alex said, because the title of the debate is the Bible true? And Alex sort of questioned, what does this mean? Is it morally true? Is it factually true? Is it historically true? Is it metaphorically true? There are so many different ways you could take this. I could take a book, shall we say, Lord of the Rings. I could say, is Lord of the Rings true? We could have that discussion. And you could say, well, Gandalf didn't really exist. Frodo didn't really exist. These are just sort of narrative details in a story of fiction. But there are other things that we know in the story that do exist. Bows and arrows exist. Certain, creatures exist. Features of landscape exist. So just because some of the details in the narrative are true, it doesn't validate other details. And really, in the entire Bible, there are only a handful of things, there are only a handful of claims that any real sort of skeptic and atheist is interested in. And that's the miracles. That would be raising of Lazarus from the dead. That would be the resurrection and the virgin birth, the immaculate conception. These are the core claims in the Bible that atheists are interested in. We're not interested in whether the Jews slaughtered a tribe and took all the women that hadn't lain with a man for themselves and put the rest into slavery, or killed all the men and boys. We're not really that much interested, because it's not remarkable that kind of thing happened in those times. It's not interesting at all. So, I mean, it's just like Matt Dillahunty said years ago that New York City, we know that place exists, but that doesn't make Spider-Man real. I mean, it's simply put as that. Let me just look at some of your comments. A creator mind, if a God exists, is less educated than a ninth grader, has a temperament of a 2-year-old. Okay, Michael Bell, that's something we've heard so many times. There's no point insulting there's no point insulting the Yahweh. There's no point. I mean, we all know that. Well, not we all know, but let's face it, the representation of God in the Old Testament is fairly horrendous. So we all feel that is the case. We've all observed and read that is the case, and it amazes me that when I go along to this Christian service every Sunday, nothing is. They really do cherry pick from the Old Testament. It's all, oh, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie on green pastures. It's all that kind of theology, all the nice bits from the Bible, the Proverbs and the Psalms, and I don't know, Moses being floated down in a basket on the river, and all that kind of thing. Joseph, and all that sort of nice parts of the Bible. There's nothing about slavery. There's nothing about the massacres. There's nothing about bears tearing apart 21 boys, and there's none of that in the services. Let's have a look. Oh God, I feel like I could go on all night with this. Let's have a look. Exactly, Stephen Jackson. Yeah, we only care about supernatural claims. Mike Wagner says, you act as if there were no doubters amongst his disciples and apostles. Okay, Mike Wagner, we know that Thomas doubted, because we got the story of the doubting Thomas. I'm not aware that any of the other apostles doubted. Maybe there's something in the Gospels that I've missed. But as far as I recall, Jesus appeared to them, and they didn't doubt when they saw him. When they saw Jesus living, they didn't doubt. They had that evidence. So I don't know. Of course, I've read all the Gospels. I've read the New Testament, but I don't remember every last detail. If there's evidence in there that there were doubters among the apostles besides Thomas, I'd be interested to know. And if you could provide a reference for that, that would be interesting. I'd like to know the circumstances under which other apostles doubted that Jesus had risen from the dead. Although, as far as I know, once they'd seen him, they didn't doubt, just like Thomas. And just like, in a way, me, if Jesus, I mean, if a man suddenly appeared in this room now, with holes in his hands and wearing a sort of, long white gown covered in blood. No, not wouldn't be white if it was covered in blood, but with a crown of thorns on his head, with long hair. I'd be turning this laptop around with a cam and saying, "Oh my God, Jesus has just appeared to me. I'd want you to see the evidence." And it would give me something to think about as well. Believe me, sadly, nothing like that ever happens. Yeah, I mean, I'm a dreamer. I mean, I'm a dreamer in the sense that I dream a lot when I'm asleep, and I remember a lot of my dreams. If there's a God, appear to me for goodness sake in one of my dreams. If Jesus, if you're real, appear to me in one of my dreams. If you're a Jesus believer, pray to your Jesus and ask your Jesus to appear to me in one of my dreams. And if that happens, I'll report on it. Where's Jesus in my dreams? If there really is, especially with me being an online atheist, why is Jesus not appearing to me in my dreams and saying, "Look, Stuart, I want you on my side"? Where are you, Jesus? For goodness sake. It's so frustrating. Let's see, what else have we got? Yeah, Guitar Dog says the only doubter is Thomas, but Jesus made the effort to convince him. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Trying to quit smoking after 45 years. Well, I never smoked in my life, so I don't have that issue. It looks to me like there are other conversations going on. Yeah, smoking. All right. Cherry picked is the only way to deal with the Bible. Yeah, there was something that Alex said about Desouza, something about shifting the goalposts. I'm just trying to remember what it was. Let's have a look. Just a moment, please, while I read my notes. Yeah, there was one thing. I noticed that when Desouza challenged Alex and said, because, yeah, it comes back to this thing that it's a big, or at least Christians think, Christian apologists use atheists to bolster their case. In other words, if atheists are engaging in fallacies, or they are asserting that something is impossible, all of a sudden it validates Christianity. Well, that's a fallacy. It doesn't work like that. So if I assert that, for example, a man coming back from the dead is impossible, then I've got to prove that. Okay, well, we know biologically it's not possible. At least if somebody's definitively dead, and the brain has been starved of oxygen for at least an hour. Let's face it, no brain is coming back from being starved of oxygen for an hour. You can talk about near-death experiences as much as you want. Once the brain's been starved of oxygen for like 5, 6, 7 minutes, you get severe brain damage, and then 10 minutes are over, and that's it. It's end of it, game over. So, yeah, I mean, okay, I mean, for the sake of dealing with apologists, I could say that I don't know if it's possible for a man to come back from the dead. I could say that just to avoid having the obligation placed on me to justify a claim by saying, okay, well, it's impossible. These miracles are impossible. It's impossible for resurrection to happen. The Immaculate Conception is impossible because biologically it's been proven that, unless the egg is fertilized by sperm, this just can't happen. There can't be a pregnancy, and we know that from biology. And we know that if the brain is dead for more than a certain amount of time, there's no coming back from the dead. And yet we have these miracles in the Bible, these claims being made, and we have Christians using these assertions, which I think actually are quite reasonable assertions, that these things go against nature, they can't happen. And then the claim is, well, yeah, but they wouldn't be miracles if they could happen, would they, Stuart? Therefore, case one. No, not case one, because it's still begging the question. Yes, I agree with you. It's absolutely the point that these are miracles because they go against the laws of the natural world. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. That's not what's in question. What's in question is whether they happened or not. Whether they're possible or not, I don't know. And it did surprise me a bit that Alex admitted that certain things were possible. Maybe he did that because he didn't want to get bogged down and he didn't want Desouza to switch the burden of proof. And Alex, for example, was asked, do you believe it's possible to part the Red Sea? And Alex said, yes, why not? I don't know if it's possible to part the Red Sea. I suppose that if you had sufficient technology, it could be done. It could be done in the same way that maybe if a stream, or if you've got a puddle of water, I suppose you could, you could use two barriers to divide it. Yeah. Well, I suppose that in that sense, Alex is probably correct. If you've got sufficient technology, it could be done. But could it be done by a man holding a staff up to a sea and seeing the water part like that? Well, there's no evidence that that is actually possible. But I try not to get involved in those kind of arguments, and I would probably just say I don't know if it's possible. But there's no good reason to think that Moses parted the Red Sea. It's in the Old Testament. There are lots of things in the Old Testament. I mean, that's one of the things claims in the Old Testament that I would probably have an issue with almost as much as the miracles. But actually, most of what's in the Old Testament, I don't have a problem with. It's just the extraordinary things which are being claimed. Let me just have a quick look at your comments. Yeah, I know. Okay, yeah, I had a powerful dream, but I know it was a dream. Yeah, I know. And of course, if I dreamed about Jesus, yeah, I also know it would. Well, this was just a dream. Nevertheless, if Jesus appears to be in a dream, that would be sort of interesting. But in none of my dreams has Jesus ever featured. And in fact, no religious figure has ever featured in any of my dreams. That would be kind of interesting, because I would be trying to remember what was said. Not that I really believe that dreams are a supernatural in any way, or a sign of astral projection, or any of that nonsense. I've read various theories about what causes dreams, but no, it would be sort of interesting if Jesus did appear in one of my dreams, or if at least a figure Jesus appeared. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. It must be a bit echoey because I'm not using my microphone. Okay, where are we? Let me just look at your messages. Stuart, have you ever seen the video by the Christian man named Ken Peters? The video is called I Saw the Tribulation. It is a video and claims about the end times. Yeah, well, Andres Castanos, why would I want to watch that? Okay, Hiker 2023, apart from atheism, what's your metaphysical worldview, naturalism? Okay, well, I'm not. Let me just answer this very briefly because I can't spend the whole video talking about this. I remember being on a forum some time ago, a philosophy forum or a theist forum, where atheists were coming on challenging Christians, or actually just a general forum as part of a specialist group. I think that's what it was. And you'll always find a thread opened up on a specialist forum. I mean, let's say it's a forum for stamp collecting. There will be a general forum, and you'll always see a question: is there a God, or whatever, or something like that? And I went onto one of these, and I started making various comments, and somebody said to me, "I presume that you're a philosophical naturalist." I said, "No, actually, no." Yeah, because I could see where that was going. Somebody was getting ready to switch the burden of proof that there's only a natural world. You've excluded the possibility that there could be anything other than the material world. Prove it. No, thank you. I'm a methodological naturalist, which doesn't put that burden on me. But I don't really want to talk about that now, because there's, I mean, look, this has been going for 35 minutes, and I'm only just really scratching the surface of the Desouza O'Connor debate. Let me just have a quick look and see what else you say. Oh yeah, so Andre is saying this chap Ken something apparently had a dream in the 1980s describing lots of modern things. Yeah, well, look, when I was 15, I had a dream. You know what I had a dream about? I had a dream that there were these things called mobile phones, and I dreamed that they were like little personal entertainment centers where you could watch television programs, you could communicate with people. I even dreamed about the internet. Yeah, and I wrote that down as well, and I signed it and I dated it. Do you believe me? If not, why not? Okay, let's move on. Yeah, okay, that's fine. You know, I get so many people saying, "Oh, go and read this, go and read that." That's fine, but it's very rare. It would be very unusual for me to follow any of these things up because I've got my own reading list, I've got my own research to do, and I just haven't really got the time to chase all these things up unless it looks to me particularly interesting. But you know, if it's just a book full of near-death experience claims, the odds are I'm not going to be much interested in that. So it's not that I'm ruling out that these sources could have something interesting in them. Maybe they have, but one has got to be very selective about what one does with one's time. And I work full time. I have my own business. This is just a part-time interest for me. So I try to keep up with latest developments in science and that kind of thing, and counter apologetics, philosophy if I can, but it's not easy. So I just try to do what I can. It's not perfect, but you know, I may have missed something, but so far I still haven't been presented with sufficient evidence to convince me that any God exists, and that's all I'll keep saying until I find that evidence or until it's presented to me. Dinesh didn't do his theology much justice during the debate. No, that's true. I thought that all of his points were poor, but then again, he's not doing. He's got a very difficult job to try and justify his claim that the Bible is largely true. Let's just see what else I wrote down. Oh, this was funny. I'm glad I wrote this down. Yeah. So, okay, we're getting on to Alex saying, well, you know, we had all these things happening in the Old Testament, and we had slavery in the Old Testament, and okay, we had the abolition of slavery, which you say was led by Christians, but could the Old Testament have been used to counter slavery? And Desouza said, well, no, not really, but it depends on how you use the Bible, and that the Bible can be used in different ways towards a good end, towards a sort of good outcome. And the good outcome, of course, would have been abolishing slavery. And he referred Alex to, I didn't get the name of the person, but he said there's a compendium of sermons which he recommends Alex consult. I thought that was hilarious. Can you really see Alex O'Connor researching down this compendium of sermons and sitting and going through it? Oh, he must be an optimist, or I think he just threw that out there because he couldn't think of anything else to say. I don't know. And to think that these people get money for this. Okay, yeah, so that was funny anyway. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, okay, so D'Souza said, yeah, you can't. Yeah, well, again, this when apologists start switching the burden of proof, then it's like it's the last thing they've got. So he said to Alex O'Connor, you know, you can't disprove the miracles. And of course, Alex said, no, I can't disprove the miracles, but you're the one making the claim. And really, this is a very basic kind of phone call for the line when somebody calls in and says, well, you know, I believe in God, and you can't prove that. Or you know, Matt would say, well, there's not enough evidence to convince me that God exists. And then the believer says, well, that doesn't mean that he doesn't exist. And that really is what D'Souza is saying. You know, no, I can't prove that the miracles happened, and there's not enough evidence to convince you that they did happen. But that doesn't mean that they didn't happen. That is unbelievable. That is like kindergarten level argumentation, isn't it? Yeah, you can't prove that I haven't got a green dragon in my garage. Let's see, what else have we got from that? Well, anyway, I do recommend that you watch. I think that's about it. Of course, there's a lot more, but I do recommend that you watch that. It was much better from Alex. He was abysmal, frankly, with some of the Justin Brierley, and he was abysmal with William Lane Craig. But I can see that Alex has probably still got what it takes. I thought he was very sharp, and he's got a lot of knowledge on the Bible, and he was really able to deal with every single one of Desouza's points. And yeah, it was good to see him. And I don't see Alex becoming a Christian anytime soon. And I know that Alex has got a lot of Christian fanboys on his channel, and he does very well. He makes a lot of money out of Christians cheering him on just because he's been nice to William Lane Craig. I mean, look, I would be nice to William Lane Craig as well if he would condescend to talk to me, but I would challenge him probably more strongly than Alex did. And, on his defense of certain barbarous acts in the Old Testament, just on the basis, well, if God did it, it must be good. You can't question what God does, because whatever God does is automatically moral, and that's how we work out what our morality is, because whatever God does and whatever God says, that is morality. That is what our morality is based on. So if God orders you to go out and slaughter a village, it must be good. Okay, Alex did a good job of getting a platform for William Lane Craig and drawing him out to expose that. Yeah, I suppose he did. In that sense, it was quite revealing to hear Craig say that. Let's see, what else have we got? Quoting other theologians with degrees and decades of experience. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm gonna move on now to other topics. So you can find that if you just go to Alex's channel and have a look at that debate. It's worth looking at. There was no Q&A because the audience said they wanted to hear more of the debate rather than a Q&A, which I thought was a good call, because mostly the Q&As are usually not that good. I find they're pretty much hopeless. So I'd rather hear two going at it on this question, and it was going well, and I thought it was a good call on the audience to say, yes, let's continue, and a good call on the moderator to put that to them. So that was very good. It was on Pangburn. Yeah, Pangburn hosted that debate. So yeah, I'd give that debate, say, 8 out of 10. It's definitely worth watching. Okay, let me just go on then, and I'll talk about some other things. Some of the videos. Oh no. I'll tell you what I'll talk about. Yeah. So as you know, I've been going along to a Christian service every week. It's quite a conventional church here in the UK. Just Protestant, and they take women priests. I think they even do gay marriages. So they're kind of fairly progressive Christians. But in the last few weeks, they've been getting worried because they've been analysing the figures. And first of all, the church as a whole is losing money. Yeah, the church as a whole is losing money, even though I think it was said that they've run a deficit of £8 million this year, which is quite a bit of money to be losing. Yeah, quite a bit of money. And the only consolation for this church, because I spoke to one of the ministers, they got two ministers in there, and I spoke to one of them and I said, look, you've got a big church there, and you've got an area where you could put a shop and you could sell gifts with a Christian theme. I think you could do quite well out of it to, plug the gap a bit with your finances. And he smiled and he said to me, well, Stuart, he said, actually, our church makes money. It's the other churches that are doing badly. They've got so few people going to them. And I believe that, because this particular church is absolutely packed. They've got about 300 people in there. And yeah, I mean, as I said before, they raised £8,000 just from that congregation alone for Christian aid. So yeah, but on the whole, they are losing quite a bit of money. So the last 2 weeks, they have been begging the congregation to help bolster and rejuvenate Christianity in the parish and in the country, really, pointing out that for the first time, 51% are now having no religion, saying that they don't have any religious beliefs. And for this sermon on this particular week, that was the Sunday that went by, the whole sermon was devoted to encouraging people to go out there and preach the word. Can you believe that? Can you believe it? So there was a picture, there were two pictures. One was Billy Graham, and another one was some other preacher, some other, I don't know. And, Billy Graham was held up as an example that this is a man who encouraged millions into the church, and that we need to be a bit more like him. Not me. I'm talking about, the congregation. Not me, of course. I was standing there smirking like the smug atheist I am, only they didn't know why I found it so amusing. Yeah, so the point is, let's be a bit more like Billy Graham. And I believe that Billy Graham has got a son, and that he is in the UK at the moment, and he is going to be preaching to a large audience. And yeah, so let's be more like Billy Graham. And what kind of person are you? What kind of person are you that you might be able to help the church out? You might have a skill that you don't know about. And he used a word, a sort of acronym, APEST. So, are you an apostle? Are you a prophet? Are you an evangelist? Are you a storyteller? Or are you a teacher? You might be one of those things or more than one of those things. And if you've got those skills, then why don't you go out and use them? Yeah, I can really see that. I mean, most of them in there are over 70. I mean, I'm just a whippersnapper compared with most of them. I can really see those, those Christians going out and convincing other people that Jesus loves them. Oh yeah, I can really see that happening. Yeah, no, somehow I don't think that's going to happen. And there was a lot of desperation, though. I felt like there was a lot of desperation because he was saying that, quoting some of the figures, the census figures, that belief in Christianity in the UK is on the decline. Well, of course, that's music to my ears. That's good news. That's not bad news. And people having religions is on the decline. And also attendance in churches on the decline. The church is losing money. And in 100 years' time, if we don't do something, there won't be a church left. There won't be a church. Well, that's fine with me. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, the good news is not, for me, the good news would not be that Jesus rose from the dead. The good news would be that the church has finally died and expired. But I suspect that they will manage to continue somehow. There are other branches of Christianity doing rather well, like more fundamentalist versions of Christianity seem to be flourishing a bit more than the progressive varieties in the UK anyway. But on the whole, belief in Christianity is down, which is a good thing. On the flip side, belief in Islam is up. I'll talk about that another time. So let's have a look. How are we doing? The power on my battery is running low. It's so annoying with these laptops. You buy them and you've got a battery which lasts 8 hours, and then 3 years later, a full charge from that same battery only gives you like 1.5 or 2 hours. Well, of course, I know that it's just physics and the way that batteries degrade. They don't last forever. Okay, so let me see. What else are you guys saying? Let's have a look. Mormons are declining in the UK, really? Oh, yes, because I was talking with that minister about the Mormons, and saying that they've got absolute billions, which they have. They're the most wealthy religious group in the world, I believe. I think they've got assets of $8 billion, which is quite a bit of money. They've got more money than the Roman Catholic Church, which is unbelievable. But from the figures I've seen, yeah, they seem to. Phil Garrett's asking, always wanted to know how you feel about the arguably antagonistic approach that the atheist experience takes to theist conversations. I think maybe you're talking about when Matt was there. I don't really watch the atheist experience, to my shame, much these days. I've tuned in now and again. I've noticed that since Matt moved on, they've been slightly less antagonistic. Yeah, but I mean, obviously with the line, it's mainly Matt, I suppose, that is very antagonistic towards theist callers. I actually think Erica deals very well with them. I think Erica is absolutely phenomenal. She's young, she's very knowledgeable, and the way that she deals with putting callers on hold, she's really, really good. She really knows how to deal with people. But people have got different temperaments, and Matt does have a temper problem. Maybe he should take some anger management classes or something like that. I don't know. I suppose it's not really for me to say because I'm not in a position to diagnose. But from all the years of watching him, he seems to have become sort of progressively more angry. And you can't just say that it's because he's had to deal with these arguments so many times, because there are other counter apologists who've also been dealing with these arguments for a long time. I somehow think that Jimmy gets almost artificially angry since he started working with Matt. I don't know whether he used to get angry in the early days when he was Mr. Atheist, but he seems to be kind of mirroring, or him and Matt a bit like an echo chamber in that sense, that Matt gets angry and Jimmy is also getting angry more so than he used to. But with him, it doesn't look genuine. With Matt, it does look genuine. When he gets angry, you can feel it. But with Jimmy, it looks like he's faking it. I don't know if any of you guys have had that observation. That's how it seems to me, but I could be wrong. I don't think I'm wrong that there isn't a God. And I really don't think that, honestly, I honestly don't think there is a God. And I'm leaning more towards hard atheism. That I don't often say it because I don't want the burden of proof shifting onto me, but honestly, I really do not believe that there are any gods at all, and I don't believe that there is any supernatural at all. And if I had to put, I don't know. Look, if I had, should we say, a life-changing sum of money, let's say $1 million in my hand right now. All right. Now that would mean a lot to me. That would mean a lot. I lost over $1 million through my marriage. Well, I didn't really lose it because, I spent it on bringing up a child and maintaining a wife, etc., etc. And I suppose I got value for money and everything. But if I could have all that money back that I spent on my family over those 20 years, and I had it in front of me, and I was told, now, you can either bet this money on there being a God or there not being a God. I would, without any hesitation, or you can take $500,000. No, let's not say $500,000. Or you can take 100,000 and just keep it, and you don't have to bet anything at all. Or you can take the whole million and bet it on there being no God. I would, without any hesitation, not take the 100,000, even though actually I could really do with that money because I live in rented accommodation, and it would kind of help me to get back on my feet after my divorce. Although I'm getting on my feet quite well actually, because I've got my own business and I'm building back up. But yeah, it would be useful to have that sum of money, 100 grand. Yeah, it would be nice to walk away with it. But I'm so confident there's no God. I would stake that $1 million or £1 million on a double or nothing deal to turn it into 2 million. I would have absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. Not only is there no evidence, no good convincing evidence for a God, but there being a God makes absolutely no sense at all. It really doesn't make any sense. And I'll go into that on another video. I'm not going to go through my reasons now for believing there's no God or why I would stake that $1 million. But yeah, and I guess that a lot of you guys out there would also stake that $1 million too, rather than keep 100,000 and put it in your pocket as safe money. You would be so confident. Now, what I'd be really interested in is how many Christians out there. This would really be a test. If you could take somehow, and if by some kind of magic it could be known, if you took a Christian, a multimillionaire Christian, and said, stake your entire wealth on your belief that there's a God. Yeah. I wonder how many would take that bet, and you will get 10 times back in return if there is a God. How many would either take that bet or don't take the bet? Oops. Right. I'm going to have to. Now, I'm running out of energy power, guys. I think that my live stream is about to come to an end.